In this movie, I want to show you one of my favorite tools I use in Illustrator. I don't use it every day, but when I need it, I'm glad it's there. It's part of this Astute Graphics Vector Scribe plugin called the Extend Path tool. Let me show you how it works. Now, I know this isn't part of the features that come with Adobe out of the box. And the reason why this plugin exists is because there is no way to do this in Adobe. And it's something that I don't run into all the time, but I've had to use it enough that it makes it well worth having this plugin and this feature. So when I started working on this design, this was for a manufacturer that creates products for the automobile industry, and they wanted their motif to look like an automobile medallion that you might see on a car. I started working out this concept, but I got to this point and I realized there was one part about this that wasn't working well, and it was the gap in between the shield and the wing. I didn't like the gap there. And if I go back to my base artwork, I drew it with the gap in there, so I wanted a gap, but this is obviously a very crude drawing. I didn't draw it precisely. I just draw it enough to guide my building, but it wasn't what I call a refined sketch. It's a rough sketch. Now, when I built my vector art, I knew most of this would be basic shapes, so I could probably get away with it. And I kept that gap in there because I intended to want a gap in there. But then when I started building out the final black and white artwork, and specifically when I started adding these outlines to it, I noticed that because I added these outlines to it, it created a larger gap there than what I intended. And I didn't like that. So I wanted to fix that. Well, I'm going to show you how I fix that, because how do you adjust this curve now that it's established and it's trimmed off? Well, you would have to just eyeball it. You would have to go in there and try to edit it to retain the look and feel, in which case I'd probably have to go back and rebuild the outline because it wouldn't match the exact curve and flow of the original shape that I created it from, which is all of these pieces that make up the wing here. So I'm going to show you how I use this tool, this feature, to make edits like this and make it go really quickly. So we're going to switch to a layer here, and I'm going to zoom in just on this layer of this piece of this wing, and I'm going to go to the scissors tool, and I'm going to just cut at this anchor point and cut at this anchor point. And then I'm going to select the piece we don't need and delete it. So you can see it still has a fill, it still has the stroke, but now it has an open end, and that's what you want, because we're going to extend this path and extend this path. And here's the beauty of this tool. If I go to the Path Scribe tool, hold it, I'm going to click on the Extend Path tool. I'll select this one, and it magically knows the radius that it's established and it's continuing it. I could go all the way up here if I wanted to, but that's what the math is saying, where the path would go if it continued that arch. I only need to go this far, so I'm going to go that far and stop. And then on this one, I'm going to do the same, go about that far and stop. And now, once I've done that, I can just select this shape, go back to my pen tool, and I can just click on the end of one, end of other, and close it to fix it. Now what I'm going to do, because I do want this gap in there, I just don't want that gap so huge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this shape. So we're going to clone this, Command-C, Command-F, and just make sure it's on top, select this shape, and I'm going to trim it off. And you can see now it's improved the readability of this mark. The visual continuity is retained in terms of the spacing between this and everything else. I think that looks great. So we can toss the one on the left, and I'm going to clone this, Command-C, Command-F, and then I'm going to use the Unite tool, and we'll find a center spot here, and I'll just reflect it over. And that's how quickly I can fix a mark like this using the Extend Path tool. It's really helpful. Once again, it's usually when I realize something isn't working or I've made a mistake. It's not something I use all the time, but when I have need for it, it really saves a lot of time, because I'd have to rebuild a lot of stuff to fix this if I didn't have access to this tool. So it's really important. The final brand mark in this context, color-wise, came out like this. It was a lot of fun. So Illustrator is great, but having secondary party plugins makes it even better and allows me to customize my workflow so I can create with more precision and make the process easier.